Good afternoon. It's 6 minutes past 12 midday. The Mannin Line is in session through till 1 o'clock today. Our guest for the whole hour, Tim Baker, MHK for Aaron Michael, and the Minister for the Department of Infrastructure. Just first of all, the COVID test numbers go like this. 17,703 COVID tests, 17,697 have been concluded, 6 are awaiting results, and 45 people are awaiting tests for COVID-19. And just a quick note, if you're driving, the matrix signs to the mountain from Sulby, Bagarrow, Ramsey and Hilbury all showing fog on the mountain. So if you're driving, heading on the mountain road, do take care. Tim Baker, good afternoon. Good to see you.
Good afternoon, Andy.
Well, crikey, there's the COVID test now. And how much does COVID impinge on Department of Infrastructure?
Well, I think it's there as a background factor. I mean, clearly it's been a huge issue through this year, and it's had many knock-on effects in all sorts of different aspects. And I think we've come through most of those now, but there's still ongoing impacts, and certainly things like our air services, for example. I mean, it's incomparable with what we've got now against what we had 12 months ago, for example. Big
news today. Loganair and the deal that's been signed. Just run us through that, would you?
Yeah, absolutely delighted to confirm the announcement. Loganair are now going to be providing services to Heathrow from effectively from the 1st of December, and bookings are now open.
Okay,
really.
And how long did that? I mean, what was the process of going through that with Loganair, and how much are we in for with Loganair? Are we underwriting load factors on the planes? How does it work?
So the way it works is, at the moment, none of our air services are commercially viable because obviously with restricted borders, there just isn't the flow of passengers. But clearly, it's important that we maintain good levels of connectivity to and from the island. And London is clearly a key destination. So we've been having a service provided by Loganair into London City, and that has been extended on a sort of short-term, month-by-month basis up until the end of November. We've been underwriting that and effectively sharing the benefits as passenger numbers have built back, and this is an extension of that arrangement, but it's a much longer term arrangement. This is through to April, and it obviously moves it to Heathrow, which is far better from a connectivity point of view. But the principles are the same. We're underwriting it and sharing the benefits.
Loganair, of course, immensely experienced. Scotland's airline, they call it as well. Is this something you would see extending into the future?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, we've got a very good working relationship with Loganair, and clearly, as we get through the COVID situation and our connectivity requirements come back to a more normal basis, we see them as a key partner going forward for the island, and they're very much open to working with us and creating that relationship that we're really looking for, and with the prospect of bringing jobs back to the island and basing aircraft here. In
terms of what, maintenance?
Mm-hmm.
That will indeed be good, because obviously lots of jobs in maintenance have come and gone in the past, so that's an important, and they're committed to that, are they?
That's the way the relationship is developing, yeah.
How far into the future is that extending?
So the contract that we've agreed with them at the moment is through to, from memory, the 27th of March, when the clocks change, which is the way these things work in the airline world. So we've got a period of stability now for people to book their flights to and from London.
And where does this leave EasyJet and Aurigny?
So EasyJet, we've got a very good relationship with EasyJet. Realistically, they need to have pretty open borders before they can make services commercially viable, and we did talk to them as part of the process around London and the Loganair conversation, but we weren't able to get to an outcome with them at this point in time. So really good relationship. Very much see EasyJet as part of our long-term package of air services, because clearly they bring a different offering to the island and so yeah, very very happy that the relationship is still there. In terms of Arini, that relationship is really around the air bridge to Guernsey, which at the moment is suspended. Obviously, initially because of the cluster that Guernsey experienced. There is an appetite to continue that air bridge through into the new year, and I understand that there's quite a lot of interest from sports clubs in particular on the island, or on both islands, to see that continue. So I'd be hopeful that an arrangement can be reached to reinstate the air bridge and get the flights going again, because they were very successful from both the Guernsey point of view and from the Isle of Man's point of view.
Tim Baker, MHK, is with us on the Mannin Line. If you want to talk to Mr. Baker, call 66 13 68. You can also text or email in, text 166 177, email studio@manxradio.com. I had an email in from Dennis who says, what's the news on the border force, and who will run the border force? It's due to come in next spring, is it?
Yes, the border force is something which is being worked on at the moment. It's largely been driven by Cabinet Office, and obviously it does dovetail with the activities of the Department of Home Affairs in terms of the police, etc. But it's important that we've got control over movement to and from the island. We have that at the moment with the processes that are in place around residents returning to the island, but as things become more open, hopefully the restrictions will ease, but we still need to maintain control.
So infrastructure controls ports. Will you be running the border force, or will that be Cabinet Office or Home Affairs?
It's unlikely to be Department for Infrastructure. So it's the way that these things are still under development, but it's likely to be a combination of Cabinet Office and Home Affairs in my view.
Okay. Okay. Oh crikey! Here we go. Which would you like first, Promenade or Liverpool Landing Stage?
Oh, either.
So the Promenade.
Mm-hmm.
When's it going to be open?
So when you say open, do you mean the job complete?
Yes, completely ribbon cut and everything as it should be.
Well, obviously the date that we had been aiming for was the 31st of March. That's the date that I'd made very, very clear, and that is still the contractual date that the contractor is working to, but clearly it is not going to be the 31st of March. We're still in the final discussions with the contractor around the programming of the remaining activity, and we're looking at something more towards June. I would be suggesting at this point in time.
I think it's a week on Thursday. Broadway reopens, doesn't it?
Broadway reopens on the 29th
of this month.
Yeah. Yes. So, and that is going to be happening.
Okay, and will that be access?
26th.
26th. It's a week on Thursday, I think. It's
this week. This week.
Thursday,
yes. 26th.
And is that just for turning northbound onto the Promenade?
Yes, it's so that traffic can exit the prom and head up Broadway.
Okay, and there was a gas main, I think, on Broadway, wasn't there? Was it a gas main or a water main or the way pipe? You probably dream about these things.
There was certainly the pipe that caused the big issues was the gas main, which was in pretty poor condition once it was excavated, and that's what put the majority of the delay into the process. But to be clear, 26th of November.
Okay, so that this Thursday, is it coming in anywhere near on budget?
We got a further £750,000 in the what's known as the Purple Book, which was the Treasury Minister's budget update. That is the figure that we are working to on top of the original budget, and so that's the clarity at this stage on that.
What's been your biggest headache with the prom?
The complexity of it, and the fact that obviously it was a scheme I inherited. Picked it up, and there'd been a lot of work had gone on, and it had been long running at that stage. So I think people were tired, and the adverse impact of the prom on businesses and on residents and on commuters was long established, and I think the scheme wasn't well understood in the sense that people see the visible elements, which is the surfacing, the cultural quarter, the road reconstruction, etc. But actually, fundamentally, it's a services project, and there's so much complexity in replacing those services whilst also keeping them running. And the word services covers gas, it covers water, it covers telecoms, drainage, sewage. There's a lot going on in that site under the ground, and those are predominantly things that the public take for granted. And it's a building site, it's a major civil engineering project, but yet people are still living their daily lives in effectively in the vicinity of it.
I mean, do you accept? I mean, as a politician, you're on hiding to nothing personally, taking on the prom.
Yes, but somebody's got to do it. The Minister for Infrastructure is tends to be on a hiding to nothing. That's what I accepted when I was offered the job, and I think you've got to embrace it and just accept it how it is. You're not going to win a popularity contest as the Minister for Infrastructure, and you have to make hard decisions, and you have to try and explain those as best as you can. But you're interfering in people's day-to-day lives, and that tends to get a negative reaction from people, and I understand that.
You picked the project up as well, so have you had any impact on policy, or have you just been following other people's policies?
Clearly, the overall scheme was a scheme that was approved by Tynwald, and it was contracted to Alding Construction, and the overall timescales and the budgets and those aspects were all set. Essentially, I picked up something that was part completed, and I very clearly needed to set the tone that this needed to be driven forward. We had an opportunity around COVID that allowed some of the excessive constraints on the contractor to be relaxed and gave them a chance of making progress. So that was a positive, but it needed really driving, and it needed somebody to actually put some urgency and some immediacy on it, which is why I went for the 31st of March date, because you can talk all you like about getting on with it, but you have to put a date on it, and you have to then drive it. And I've tried to put in some interim milestones as we've gone along. So we had a date around the 8th of September, which was around Summerhill in particular, and at that point we got Summerhill reopened, but not Broadway. But we got two-way traffic back onto the prom, so that was good to hit that date. This date this week, the 26th of November, again really important that we get Broadway open and get traffic flowing on it, and start to revert the prom back to normality with things like Christmas parking and also Church Road Marina being open to allow access up to the car park. So I've been able to try and put my stamp on it. I also made the very clear commitment that we are going to complete the horse tram track down to the sea terminal, which I think there was some speculation that might be axed from the scheme, but that's the will of Tynwald, and that's what I'm working towards.
You're a chartered accountant, trained as a chartered accountant, so by definition, but inside, you're a number cruncher. You're somebody, you know how many beans make five. So how do you feel about when you look at the sums that have been invested? Is this value for money?
It's a very difficult question to. It depends on your definition of value, doesn't it? I think this is going to be a great end product, and I think that Douglas, as our capital and as our flagship, needed investment to bring it forward and to make it a more attractive place to live and work and visit. And I think the prom is absolutely central to that. And the investment hasn't gone in over the years, and it's you have to have good infrastructure. The infrastructure under the road literally was crumbling, and would not have sustained us. So something had to be done. I actually think there's a lot of value in what's been done. Unfortunately, it's not very visible, most of it, and I think that's the challenge. But any successful town or city it has good infrastructure. It's easy to move around. It's attractive. It's got good connectivity, good communications, and we have to modernise the island, and you have to start with Douglas. So
is the prom future proof? Do you think
it's as future proofed as we could make it? I mean, all the services are being renewed. There's ducting in there, which would allow new services to be routed through in an easy way. We've obviously laid the tracks for the horse tram with a view to potentially they could take say a light tram service. So we've tried to do that as much as possible without obviously going to the extent of gold plating it, where you end up spending money just in case. And I think there's a fine balance to be had, but I do think a lot of thought had been put into it as to make sure it had longevity. And
how important do you think it is to? You were mentioning the possibility of light rail on the tram tracks. How realistic is that?
At the moment, it's not something that is going to happen in the short term. But I think as we grapple with issues around climate change, for example, as we grapple with issues around where people want to live and how they journey around there, public transport becomes increasingly important, and that's bus and potentially rail-borne public transport. And I think we have to think about these things and be open, because we're talking 20, 30, 40 years into the future. You need to keep your options open, but equally we've got to recognise that we haven't got a high density of population on the island, so some of the transport systems that are available in places like London or Sheffield or Manchester are not going to work here just because we haven't got the density.
And that's the sort of conundrum almost, in that obviously we are a small nation. We do have aspirations, we do have ambitions, but we don't have that great weight of population. So how do you counterbalance, how do you weigh up ambition versus ability?
That's a really key trade-off, isn't it? We've got to be ambitious. You've got to set yourself up and plan for success, but equally you've got to be realistic as well, and actually try and make sure the decisions you're making are smart ones, that you're using your limited resources, because we've all got limited resources. They are finite. We've got to make sure they're being used in the absolutely the right way, and in things which deliver value. But you can't just look at the here and now. You've got to look into the future and plan for that.
Okay, lots of questions coming in. Chris, Mr. Baker didn't answer your question. How much is it costing to support the airlines?
That's a commercial matter between ourselves and Loganair, but it's a significant figure. But if we didn't do it, then we'd have no air services, and clearly we need air services to for both patient transfer perspective and also for connectivity.
I mean, basically, I think I mentioned load factor. Every flight has a load factor, which means that at a certain percentage, it becomes profitable for the airline. I'm guessing we underwrite that load factor.
So we effectively the way it works, we effectively agree a figure for the maximum underwrite that they will provide the service for, and then against that is the income from passengers travelling. So passengers that do travel are directly reducing the cost back to us. But I mean, the detail is commercially confidential, and I wouldn't want to disclose it, because we might have to have negotiations with airlines on extension of arrangements beyond this period.
And of course, with COVID, we don't know at what point the lines will cross and it'll be viable for everyone to continue.
That's correct. I mean, certainly an EasyJet type of operation would require fully open borders, and we're clearly some way away from that at the moment.
Okay, Joe popped a question in for Tim Baker, MHK. How are things going at the meat plant?
The meat plant is going very well at the moment.
Now, that's separate to your role in infrastructure, is it?
It is. That's the chairman of Alman Meats is a role that I picked up when I was a member of DEFRA. The meat plant was effectively nationalised, you could say, and a new board was put in place in March 2018, and I believe that things are going very much in the right direction there. It's stable. We've got a good management team in there. It's growing significantly. We're about 20% up this year against last year in terms of revenue. The price back to the farmers is good. We've got increasingly good relationships in terms of the key retailers, wholesalers and butchers on the island, and our strategic partnership with Northgate Foods into the UK is taking Manx meat to the UK marketplace, which is really important because
What needed to be straightened out at the meat plant then? What was going wrong?
It needed, fundamentally, the key elements were to strengthen the management team, and we've got a new management team in there, were to run the business as a business which was independent of the producers, to have it led by the market rather than by production, and to make sure the pricing back to the farmer was attractive enough to enable them to supply the meat plant rather than shipping their animals off island. It was also about improving our relationships with the industry and embracing modern approaches around things like marketing, supply chain management, etc.
Tim Baker, MHK, with us. He's the Minister for Infrastructure, of course, Chairman of Isle of Man Meats as well, and other roles within government. And if you want to get in touch, we'll get through a lot more of the emails and texts on the way. And, of course, we do have to talk about what's going to be happening in Liverpool shortly. It's 29 minutes past 12 midday on the Mannin Line.